Hello there. Welcome back to Interviews with Successful Leaders. I am Dr. Michael Brooms, CEO of the Center for Human Systems, and my guest today is Mr. Robert Feeney. Robert, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us about yourself and your company.
Well, I was smiling because I get to be on an interview for successful leaders. So I guess that means I get to qualify as a successful leader. Awesome.
Well,
All
of
right.
course.
Good start to the day, right? My name's Robert Feeney, and I'm the CEO and also the co-creator of a software platform. It's called Ringarang. And we house this software platform in a company called Knowledge as a Service. But based on the name, what Ringarang does is it takes knowledge and it turns it into behaviors. It turns it into habits through this habit formation process that we use with Ringarang to help drip out coaching moments, just 1 to 3 minutes a day in a gamified way that actually makes it really engaging. And we're able to help people take on behaviors where otherwise learning tends to just fall right out of our heads.
That's fascinating. How in the world did you get involved in that?
Like all interesting things, completely by accident. I was in the entertainment industry in Hollywood originally, so which is not usually coincidental with being a software executive. So I started out in film and television, and my business partner and I were looking for ways to keep fan bases engaged. In the case of TV, 6 days a week in between weekly episodes, when that used to be a thing. And we created this trivia style game. And advertisers at the time thought it was really interesting. Like Coca-Cola was collaborating with us on how do you get people to come back to the James Bond franchise when they were doing Coke Zero and 007, 007 as an integration. And then this was, way back in like 2008 or so, the recession hits and no one really wanted to pay us, enough money to run this early stage software that we had prototyped. So we were going to just hang it up and move on. But it happened that there was a fellow who had given us a little seed money. He was for this idea of this software, and he was the chief information officer for a utility company of all places up in the state of Washington. And he said, wait, hang on, before you hang it up, if you guys can get people to go back to a Coke campaign over and over again, can you get my IT employees to go to their dang training before we get audited here? We've got a federal audit coming. So we had no idea if we could do it. But long story short was that we were able to be very successful at driving them back to their training. And then we're able to measurably prove that they changed what they did. They actually changed their behaviors. And then they passed the audit with no non-compliance fines for the first time. So that was the beginning of a journey that eventually took us through clinical behavior trials, believe it or not, with the federal government. And then we built this business called Knowledge as a Service around it and use it to help develop human behaviors, mostly in the workplace for employees, to usually take on soft skills like leadership skills, communication skills, dependability. And then we very recently opened the doors to have students start taking this on who are in school and are trying to get ready for the world of work. And they often don't have the behaviors instilled in school on what employers expect of them.
Fascinating. So you are a success technically.
Well, I guess so. Yeah, I mean,
Well, right. Yeah. Okay. So did that transfer easily over to success as a leader?
I don't think so at all. Not easily,
Hmm.
since you used the term easily. It was, I've gone through what I would consider several rounds of failures to lead a team, to lead a company, to lead projects effectively. And, I mean, that puts an edge on it, makes it sound like, oh, it was all just a string of failures, but there has been success along the way too. And in some ways, the failures um, have turned into successes. And that's a lot of how I think my personal and professional development has gone too, not the least of which has been working with Dr. Michael Broom.
Mhm. I think you're saying something very important here. That particularly for a startup business,
Mhm.
to expect automatic success without failures probably doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, but we
right?
do.
Right. And many people want to stop once they fail once or twice.
Hmm.
But you say you failed several times before you learned from those and began to succeed.
Yeah, there's a word that's being put to that kind of popularly now called resilience.
Okay.
And I mean, I would say that's probably a characteristic that I've developed is resilience. I mean, I started out when I was a kid as a marathon runner. I used to run the 26-mile marathon when I was 10 years old, 11 years old with my dad as a coach, which sounds like a nutty thing to do as a kid, but that somehow early on, either that's that resilience and endurance, I was able to endure a lot of pain in order to accomplish something I wanted, either was there endemically or it just got trained because of doing that. And I don't know which it is, frankly, but it certainly has carried through with me on my life. I would never trade out, looking back, I would never trade out the failures, even though they sucked while I was going through them. It was just awful. But I wouldn't trade them out now looking back because I just don't know any other way I could have learned the things that I've learned.
Well, you saw them as learning experiences rather than quote unquote failures.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, super. All right. Okay. So let's get back to what you were saying about learning to be a leader. What would be the highlight there?
Well, it is an ongoing thing for me. I will say the things that what I've learned about it most critically at this point is that lead is what it sounds like. Leading you're leading something or someone. And what I've learned most recently is how much more important it is that you're leading someone than something. So the someone is your team. It's those who are relying on you for the leadership. In my case, for casting a vision, and being a demand that we actually stay on that vision. What I have learned a lot lately is saying this is what we need to accomplish, but then I don't insist on how it's accomplished.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
So it's something that you're saying it fits with a video I did not too long ago. It's like, what makes a leader? Two things. A leader has some place to go and people willing to follow.
yeah, very good. Really
And you
straight.
simply describe those two things. That's perfect. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mhm.
very straight. And I have found that in my case, each leader has kind of a different way of going about it, of course. But in my case, I tend to be very effective at having people follow me. What I haven't been effective at consistently is having them follow me someplace that they ultimately want to go.
Ah,
It's like they'll follow me because they see some possibility that I'm very good at kind of getting people around the campfire of a really interesting idea, but then have not always been good at staying with my team, making sure that we're all facing the same direction, empowering them to really cause the future to happen that they want as much as I want. That's a more recent skill that I've been developing.
and how did you go about developing that skill? Did that come out of failures as well?
Oh yeah. I mean, so to create cohesion in my team, first I frankly had to lose the team
Mhm.
to really get where it all was going wrong. So I had a team in this company, Knowledge as a Service, and I had built it from the ground up. My business partner and I just started hiring on interns to see if we could graduate some of them into employees. We hired on some leader level employees to see if we could bring those two together. Got it to the point where we were about 10 people. And then the problems started, and the problems were unexpected. So I had it that my team was going to continue to be excited about the vision of my company. There's a lot of groundbreaking aspects to what it is we do with Ring a Rang in the world. And that they would, because it's a small enough team, they'll work out the problems. The exact opposite happened. Instead, all of them kind of started creating their silos. And, you got a team of 10 people and only maybe about 5 or 6 of us in the same office. And it was remarkable how these sites, it was in this office, and you can look behind me and you can see, in this office over here was one person who never wanted to leave their office, and then this person never wanted to leave their office. And people sitting out here didn't want to talk to those people when they walked out. It was like there were these silos. It was a tension. It was awful. And here's the worst part. It's that when the problems became clear, like we identified what the problem was in any given situation, it always pointed back up to me that I was the one who had to go solve it. That then revealed for me that writ large, I was the one who created them. I had created a team that relied on me to say how everything was going to go, not what we were going to go after, but also how we were going to go after everything.
Well, in my language, you really did not have a team. You had a bunch of individuals
Following instructions or not.
focused on you and following instructions. That
Yeah.
a team, almost by definition, is people who are working together.
Yeah, very good. And that's precisely what was going on. Realizing that I'd created that culture was eye-opening, disturbing. And I went, oh my gosh, how could that be? So I thought, let's turn it around. So I with coaching, I then worked with the team to see if we could untie the knots that I had created around these different silos and then tie it back together again as a team. And I found that to be ineffective. The team, and I don't, in retrospect, I still don't know exactly why, but I have a suspicion it's because I'd already created that culture. There was a fair amount of personal damage that had been done among the teammates and a loss of confidence. And also just frustration, people not really wanting to come to work because they didn't feel like they had enough of a stake in it. So it was, I think the coaching that I was looking to bring into the team to fix it was a little too late. And I gave an opportunity for everybody to stay on for us to be this new, what I called Team 2.0. And to the person, they all in their own way said no, and they left the company. So that forced the issue for me to create a new team from the ground a little over a year ago. And it's been like day and night. Once I realized that I was the problem, and even with all of my experience that I've had, it just didn't seem like it could have been that I was the problem. It just had that I had hired the wrong people.
Well, you were the smart guy who had
Right.
taken it this far. It couldn't have been you.
Oh, and I'm such a nice guy and I'm easy to get along
Well, of
with. Come
course.
on. I mean, these people just get with it. I've made things so easy. I've bent over backwards for you.
Yeah.
This is all the stuff that went on in my head. And it was just really hard for me to look and say that I'd created it. And yet Michael, I had this nagging thing in the back of my head, and it was becoming louder because of the coaching I was getting, the executive coaching, that somehow I'd caused this, and I was willing to take responsibility for that. But that didn't stop the other voice, which is saying, yeah, but these people should behave differently. So there's this conflict. There's a real conflict. Creating it from the ground up, the new team, we've continued to use the term Team 2.0 to define what it is that we do differently. And I've tried to make even clear with this current team that I have what I had done with the prior team that was so different. And I think that really helped too. They've told me, they've given me feedback. I'm like, yeah, you make it really clear what teamwork looks like. And so I do play a coach still. We've used the analogy, a sports analogy, where I'm a quarterback. But one of the things that I did in my small team is I flattened it. I stopped making it so hierarchical because that hierarchy kept pointing back to me, like the answers had to go to me, right? Now it's like flat. Everybody's got to be responsible for their functions and they got to call the shots. And I just make a few key things that have to come to me. They have to get escalated to me for decisions. But other than that, it's everyone's responsibility. And then what I've done day to day is play like a quarterback who's calling the plays every so often. I don't say how to do it. I just say, okay, today in our stand up for 30 minutes today, let's make sure everybody's communicated. There's nothing that's been left, and balls that haven't been dropped. We've got to make sure we bring them back up and everyone's moving forward powerfully. And then escalate to me anything that you need decisions made or problems that I can help remove the barriers so you guys can run forward powerfully. You guys, the team, can run forward powerfully. That's where we are right now. And we're actually bringing on new team members too now.
Okay. So do you expect your individual team members to solve problems, or does the team solve problems?
Yeah, it's a great question because the answer is both. Um, and I've really made an intention about this from coaching. It's yes, everyone needs to be a problem solver because you're going to have those situations where you've got to just make a decision. You got to figure out how to fix something that's broken, let's say. And more generally, I've said, remember, this is a team 2.0. We solve problems as a team. And that actually has taken some enculturation to really get that habituated in the people of the team. Is that we come together and I say, okay, if we just identify, let's say in a team stand-up meeting, 30 minutes we have every day, that there was a ball that got dropped. And sometimes it's me that drops the ball. Then I say, all right, team, the reason I got dropped is because there's an issue. My bandwidth has gotten stuffed. I've got too many things to deal with. Let's swarm this problem. And that term, swarm the problem, has become a norm around here. And so the team goes, all right, they all lean in. They're like, well, Robert, I think we've got to get some of these things off your plate. You're starting to make a habit of this thing where you start dropping the balls, so you don't get the goals done on time. I said, okay, let's look at my list. Here are the things that I'm doing. What can we do to pull some of these things off? And then you'll see people lean in and say, well, I could take that on, or maybe this should be moved over, or we should create a new function here. It took, I'm looking back now, I think it took probably about 2 months for that conversation to become fluent in the team. At first, it was more like, hey, what do we do about it? Let's swarm the problem. Crickets, quiet. No one's quite sure who to speak up. And then someone will say something and then they'll start to get in. Well, now it's like, let's swarm the problem. And there's a kind of energy that pops up in people like, yeah, okay, let's solve this together. And that to me feels like team.
Yes. You said something that says that your people are willing to give you feedback about what you need to do to correct your behavior. That I have found to be very, very unusual because, you're the boss and you could fire them. And so people don't typically want to give you bad news about you.
That's right. And I
So how
recognize.
did you cross that bridge?
Well, I find even today, up to today, I repeat it regularly because it's just knit into the machinery for all of us that we don't offend the boss. There's always this somewhere in the back of our mind, fear of being fired or something or saying the wrong thing. So I don't take that for granted that I said it once or twice. You can give feedback to me. You can give me the bad news. You can even show me where I've failed you or failed the team somewhere. I don't just take it for granted that I've said it a couple times and therefore everyone's going to do it. No, it's like I got to repeat this on a regular basis. One of the things I do as a practice is that when there's a problem that happens, I immediately step in and look for, all right, was there anything that I didn't give you, or there's something that I could have done to help in this situation? So it immediately pulls it back to me first. And if there isn't an obvious one, at least I've now started the conversation of looking to where I could have done something or could now do something that would be of support.
So things are working pretty well for you now, huh?
Yeah, they feel really good. And I just mentioned to you in passing there that I'm going to be bringing on new team members. So I'm interested to see what happens here because I've got now a culture in this small team. Maybe bringing on 3 new people that are each of the 3 of them are going to be leaders. So the coaching I've gotten here is that's a new team. That's not the same team. So my first thought was, let's enculturate the new people into the current team 2.0. And when I looked at it from the coaching, I said, yeah, that is true. That is a new team. So I thought, my instinct is now, what do I do to create the new team? Coaching then comes back to me, which is, no, the team is going to create itself because it's a team, right? And I thought, oh, wow, my entrepreneurial instincts are almost always to pull it back to myself. I'm the one who's got to say how it all goes. And that's great when it comes to casting a vision. It's important. It's also great when a decision has to be made that truly is my decision to make. in almost every other case, it gets in the way.
Yeah,
I've,
that's our acculturation of leadership that gets in the way of many, many, many leaders. And you're talking about having made a major shift from the automatic acculturation that our society offers leaders to a very different perspective where the team is the focal point rather than you being the focal point.
yeah, yeah, and there's an interesting balance there too in my particular case because I am I'm also like a really out there figurehead for my company. I'm a face and voice that
Yeah.
people know for the company. A lot of times our customers are coming in because they've either heard of me or they know me.
Of course.
So to do that and not also, I don't know, believe my own press and think I'm the guy who's it's got to be all about me. That's the challenge that I tell you, it's a daily reminder I got to give myself because it really doesn't work otherwise. I've just seen it too many times. It doesn't work to be the one where everybody has to come to for the solutions.
So you've learned to manage your own ego.
Yeah, I suppose that's what it is. It is it is ego management for sure.
Yeah, yeah, marvelous, marvelous. So just to highlight some of the points that you've made, one, that success comes from learning from a series of failures.
For
I
sure.
think that is just a very, very important statement. And it's the resilience to keep going. I would rather not call it resilience. It's kind of an automatic where, this is not necessarily a failure. This is something for me to learn from. This
Yeah.
is something for me to build on so that I can get to where I want to go. I guess there is a level of resilience that is called for there, but I think that using learning from what you do, I think that is just super important. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And for I was looking inside my own head as you were summarizing that. And I think for me, it has become enough of a frequent practice
Mhm.
to look at, well, yeah, I mean, it's a frequent practice for me to look at where I can make shifts in order to, let's say, I'll have the team be more empowered, for example. But now when it comes to getting past failures, there is an interesting mindset that I take on. And I don't know if this is teachable. Maybe it is. Maybe it is. I just hadn't thought about it. It's that when I run into problems that might be viewed as failures, I just don't even look at them that way. I just look at them as problems to solve. It's like, this is a problem to solve. And then sometimes it's not solvable. And when it's not solvable, my mind instantly goes to how is it replaceable, or how do I move to a next thing? There isn't a sense of failure. Okay, now I've got to go, I got to sit in that for a while and then go do something. It's like I'm already to the next thing by the time I look back and say, oh, that was a failure.
Hmm.
I don't know if that's a mindset that's endemic to a person or if that's something that you teach. That's an interesting thought.
You know, well, that's a good question. And I wish we had a term for it.
Hmm.
That you don't even see something as a potential failure. It's just something that needs to be done.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
we should work on that. Come up with a
yeah,
term for that
yeah,
because that actually might be a great heuristic for people to take into their
yeah.
development.
Right. And it's something that I want to do a full-blown article on
Ah,
because I think it's so, so important.
hmm.
Okay, so then the next thing I think you highlighted was you switched from seeing your group of people as a bunch of individuals who just needed to do their job to wanting them to work together as a collaborative team.
Yes, maybe to put a little more on that initial team, the team where it didn't work,
Yes.
is that my expectation was is they were supposed to work together, but they were doing it inside a structure I had inadvertently created where it was all about me. So that
Uh,
was an impossible situation that they were in.
uh,
I was a demand here that they do something that I didn't set them up to win in doing.
So then it's the mindset of moving from you as central
Yeah.
to, oh, I need this team to work.
Yeah. And there was something, and I actually still deal with this too. We haven't talked about it. It's something like a trust issue that I have. I've multiple times seen myself not delegating something that should obviously be delegated to someone else, holding it for myself. And then when I look and I say, why am I not delegating that? And I see right there that I don't trust that someone else is going to be able to manage this as well as I will, or the way I want it
You're the
done.
smartest one in the room,
I'm
right?
the smartest one in the room, right? I'm the guy.
Right.
And
Yeah.
when I see that, I really see it as automatic. It's like a habit. It pops
Yeah.
right up in my head. Nope, I'm the best one for this. And then that is usually the one thing that's in the way of the thing going well, or my company growing or my teammate being empowered.
So then I'm still left with, okay, so you had a shift in your mindset. Did you then shift? Well, okay, how did that shift in you move into shifting your people to work together?
Okay, so the short answer is by exposing that that's the fact, that that's what I was doing, and saying it out loud to the team,
Mhm.
and saying it, kind of like as an apology, is say, all right, look, I disempowered the team by holding this to myself. I've also created bottlenecks now around my workflow, et cetera. And and when I do that, it's fascinating to me how everyone goes, uh-huh, yeah, we know. And then I go,
We were
wait a
watching you do it.
second. I know. I'm like, wait, I just revealed this amazing secret about myself, and you guys are all acting like you already know it. And they do. It's obvious to everyone but me. And I also realize, even with my current team where things are going well, I would say generally, I still see the small bits of damage that I do when I have those moments unchecked, when I don't trust. And you know how they come back to me? I'll have a teammate come back to me. We're trying to solve a problem together. And I'm throwing out ideas, expecting him to throw out ideas back to me. And he tries one idea. I'm like, well, let's not do this. Let's do something more like this. We're just kind of, in my mind, having a collaborative session on problem solving. But after I set aside one of his ideas, he then turns around and just says, well, how do you think we should do it? I saw someplace else where it was a leader had written something, and I've forgotten who it was, but I remember it struck me. He said, if you've got a teammate who can do something 80% as well as you think you can do it, let that person do it, for crying out loud. Now, I don't know that the 80% is a meaningful percentage, but that was how he stated it, right? And I thought, okay, that's useful. Whether or not that person can do it 80% as well as I can do it, or they can do it 200% better than I can do it, in my mind, I'm always the guy who should do it best, right? So I got to remember, if there's a chance this person could develop themselves and do it well enough that we can move forward and I can get past my own criticism of the way I think it ought to be done, we might actually just grow as a company, as opposed to always being stuck around Robert thinks he has to do it himself. It's like a disease sometimes, Michael.
So then to summarize that, you have to, on a regular and consistent basis, keep people talking to you and saying, I need to hear from you so that they will get past treating you totally as an authority figure.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the leader is lonely at the top comes true.
Yeah, exactly right. And I also have to continually, as that practice,
That's right.
invite them to have that conversation out loud with other people too.
Constantly. That's
And so when they're uncomfortable in that moment, acknowledge they're uncomfortable. Don't make it more uncomfortable by blaming them for not having worked it out or something. No, just keep bringing it to the center.
Amen. Amen. And maybe the final point for this conversation is you have to learn to manage your own ego after society has taught you that you're the guy at the top, the buck stops with you. I'm the leader, I'm the authority figure. I should know what I'm doing all the time.
Yeah,
And as you manage that better and better, things start to work better and better.
so true. And the word ego uh, sometimes gets the connotation of like it means you're super prideful and you're arrogant and such. But I find ego doesn't always just present itself that way. Sometimes it presents itself as being fearful, and therefore I'm trying to control things because I'm scared of the outcome of letting them go. That's ego as well, you know.
I'll tell you the truth that most ego issues come from a sense of insecurity.
That makes sense.
Those folks who are overweening and arrogant,
Yeah.
who think they're smarter than everybody else, those are basically defense mechanisms from their own insecurity.
Yeah, they certainly are for me.
Yes. Okay. Before we do final words here, let's do a brief commercial. Now, you've mentioned this coach several times.
Yeah.
Just talk about this coach just a bit.
Yeah. So you're looking at him, not here, but the other frame.
Yes.
So Dr. Michael Broom, here's my commercial on Dr. Michael Broom's work, is that when I had the prior team, Center for Human Systems, and the program that was brought in to help take a look at that, with the dragon principles and all these principles around self-management and how to have team can come together, seemed well received by this team. People, there was a little bit of resistance, like, okay, do I have to go in a coaching process? I already know how to do stuff. But generally, they're like, okay, it was good afterwards. And what I thought was supposed to be a coaching process for my team really turned out more to be a coaching process for me, because I'm the one who created this. I created the culture. I created how the teams operate. All of it stemmed from me. And I think that was even said by you, Michael, in the very beginning, but it only went so far in terms of understanding until I really got it, experientially, and had to lose that team in order to build it over again. But thankfully, that's where, in a lot of ways, the real work started. The real work started in, okay, now we've torn down the sandcastles you built here and made sure that we can build something that's in a really healthy way. Now, I'll say in my commercial here, that's not to say that every business is going to have to get torn down in order to build it back up. Every business is going to be different. But in this particular case, that's how it went. And I cannot emphasize enough how at the source of the good things that are happening today is the work that you provided us.
Well, thank you for that. Just be clear that, yeah, I can coach, but you're the one who has to
For sure.
actually do it. Okay. So, final thoughts.
Yeah. Final thoughts are, team cohesion is something that I've heard myself talk about for years in different businesses. And it's interesting that it's taken, I don't know, you might say so long, so many years for me to get to a point where I actually feel like I'm manifesting a team that is cohesive. It's never short of challenges that keep coming up. And maybe that's the summary that I would add in there. What I've gotten out of this work so much, if I had to just lift it all the way up to the top here, zooming out, it's learning how to take on a practice of dealing with myself, my ego, and then empowering the team. It's not something you set and forget. It's not something you come back to on a monthly basis or a quarterly basis. Those are all fine, but it's daily. Like, there is a practice involved in this.
Super. I thank you for spending this time with us. Much appreciated.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Michael.
Well, see you at our next coaching session.
Yeah, right. Thank you very much.
You take care now.
All right. Bye-bye for now.